In Onyx Storm, Violet discovers a power that could save the world, or destroy everything she loves. And the worst part? She doesn't even remember why. Violet's power becomes her biggest threat, not because she suddenly turns into something unrecognizable, but because the force inside her grows faster than she can understand, control, or even fully acknowledge. From the moment her abilities begin to shift, you can feel the tension threading through every choice she makes. It's like watching someone hold a storm in their hands while pretending it's only rain. She knows something is changing, but she doesn't want to admit how deeply it's rewriting the way she moves through the world. Power is supposed to be a gift, a strength, a tool to protect the people she loves. Instead, it becomes a source of fear, and not fear of her enemies, but fear of herself. That's what makes this transformation so absorbing. She's not a character who craves dominance or glory. She's someone who has fought tooth and nail just to survive, and suddenly she's carrying something that could turn every battle, every friendship, every fragile moment of trust into dust if she loses control for even a heartbeat. What makes this shift so intense is the emotional weight tied to it. Violet has always been someone defined by resilience. She grew up learning to push through pain, expectations, and her own doubts. But now she's dealing with a form of power that doesn't care about discipline or training. It surges in unpredictable moments, shaped by instinct and fear instead of logic or skill. This isn't a weapon she can practice with or a magic she can refine. It's something raw and alive inside her, something that answers to emotions she doesn't even fully understand. The danger isn't only external, it's deeply internal. And that makes the stakes higher than any physical threat she's faced so far. You feel the tension every time she tries to steady herself, because she isn't just protecting the world from outside dangers, she's trying to protect everyone from what she might become. Her relationships shift under this new reality too. People who once looked to her for leadership or support now sense something different. Some lean closer, wanting to understand her, offer strength, or shoulder part of the weight she carries. Others step back, not out of fear but because they don't know how to help someone who may be fighting a battle no one else can see. Trust becomes delicate. Every conversation feels layered, like everyone around her is speaking to the version of Violet they remember, while she's trying to figure out whether she's still that person. Her closest allies feel the change first. The people who love her know something is wrong, even if she doesn't say it out loud. And Violet, who has always pushed through her struggles quietly, now finds herself standing at the edge of something she cannot hide or control. What makes this development so compelling is how it mirrors the way real change often works. Power, in any form, reshapes us. It challenges our identity, exposes our insecurities, and forces us to confront who we are beneath all the roles we've learned to play. Violet is experiencing a transformation that demands honesty. She has to look at the parts of herself she's ignored, the emotions she's pushed down, the fears she thought she'd buried long ago. And none of this happens in dramatic, explosive moments. It's gradual. Subtle. It creeps into her thoughts, her decisions, the way she responds when danger hits. She begins to question her impulses. She worries that one wrong reaction could hurt someone she cares about. And that doubt becomes its own kind of enemy. Her physical strength isn't the problem. Her magical ability isn't the problem. The real threat comes from the collision between who she has been and who she is becoming. She's lived her entire life being told she's fragile, breakable, someone who shouldn't even be alive in the first place. She internalized that message, fought against it, and eventually proved everyone wrong. Now she's holding a force that seems limitless, and the irony isn't lost on her. The girl once considered weak now carries a power so immense it could level everything around her. But she never wanted that kind of responsibility. She never wanted to be someone others feared or worshipped. She just wanted to survive, to belong, to love, to protect her people. And now she's terrified that the very thing meant to help her do that might end up tearing it all away. The emotional conflict deepens with every moment she feels the power pulse inside her. It's not just energy. It's memory, instinct, legacy, and destiny entangled in ways she can't unravel. She begins to sense that this power didn't choose her because she was the strongest or the bravest. It chose her because she was willing to shoulder burdens no one else could understand. But that realization doesn't comfort her. It isolates her. When she looks at her friends, she wonders if they can sense what's shifting in her. When she looks at the person she loves, she wonders how long she can keep pretending she's still in control. The fear isn't loud or frantic. It's quiet and constant, like a whisper that follows her everywhere she goes. Her battles become less about defeating enemies and more about mastering herself. Every time she taps into her abilities, she feels the edge she's walking on. Too much strength, and she risks losing herself. Too little, and she risks losing the people she's sworn to protect. That balance becomes a daily challenge, something she has to renegotiate with every breath. She begins to move differently, think differently, react differently. She becomes hyper-aware of her emotions, her surroundings, and her choices, as if she's trying to create a cage out of self-control strong enough to contain the storm inside her. But storms aren't meant to be contained, and she knows it. The power is growing. It's evolving. And no amount of discipline can keep it quiet forever. The more Violet tries to understand this power, the more she realizes that it isn't just an ability. It's tied to something larger, ancient forces, buried histories, and truths she has barely begun to uncover. She senses that this power carries a cost, a price she hasn't yet paid but knows is coming. And that looming consequence keeps her awake at night. It makes her question every victory, every moment of relief. She starts to wonder if she's becoming a weapon rather than a person. And that thought terrifies her more than any battlefield ever could. Memory is the foundation of trust, the glue that binds alliances, and the invisible thread connecting past choices to present actions. When memory starts to fail, even the strongest bonds begin to wobble, and nothing in the world of politics, war, or friendship remains stable. In Violet's world, memory is not merely a personal trait, it is a weapon, a shield, and, paradoxically, a curse. As memory loss begins to creep in, it reshapes the entire landscape of alliances, turning friends into strangers and allies into unpredictable threats. The very alliances that were built over years of shared struggle and mutual trust begin to falter under the weight of forgetfulness. A plan that once relied on the unity of a council of warriors or a coalition of kingdoms suddenly collapses because one key player cannot remember the agreements made, the promises sworn, or even the faces of those they once trusted implicitly. Memory, it turns out, is not just an individual matter, it is the invisible currency of cooperation. In the beginning, the shifts are subtle. A misremembered instruction, a forgotten warning, a name misplaced in conversation, all of these small lapses begin to plant seeds of doubt. Allies start to notice, first as a passing worry and then as a gnawing suspicion. If someone cannot remember the last battle strategy or forgets a critical secret that was shared in confidence, paranoia grows. In Violet's situation, this paranoia is exacerbated by the high stakes of their environment, lives, kingdoms, and entire futures hang in the balance. A minor slip of memory could mean the difference between victory and total annihilation. The initial cracks in alliances are almost imperceptible, but as memory loss deepens, the cracks widen into chasms. Decisions that once seemed straightforward now require constant verification, and leaders begin to question whether their allies are genuinely aligned with them or if they are unconsciously sabotaging their own cause through forgetfulness. The political ramifications are immediate. Treaties that were once ironclad become fragile, as negotiators struggle to remember the precise terms agreed upon. Conversations must be repeated, assurances restated, and old agreements revisited constantly. In a world where timing is everything, these delays can be catastrophic. A delay in recalling a critical plan can result in missed opportunities, failed ambushes, or an enemy striking with devastating precision. Memory loss turns time into an enemy. Allies who relied on seamless coordination suddenly find themselves out of sync, and miscommunication becomes as dangerous as betrayal. Even the most disciplined forces begin to operate on different assumptions, each decision informed by gaps in recollection. On a personal level, the psychological effects of memory loss ripple through alliances in unpredictable ways. Trust is a fragile thing, and the inability to recall past actions breeds resentment. One ally might feel burdened by the responsibility of constantly reminding another of obligations or past agreements, while another might grow frustrated at being doubted or second-guessed. These interpersonal tensions can escalate quickly, eroding bonds that once seemed unbreakable. Even acts of kindness or loyalty are misinterpreted because the context in which they were given has been forgotten. Alliances are not just political constructs, they are deeply human networks built on shared history. When memory fails, the very fabric of these networks begins to unravel. Memory loss also introduces a dangerous unpredictability into the behavior of key figures. Individuals who once adhered to a strict moral or strategic code may now act impulsively or contradictorily, simply because they cannot remember why they previously acted otherwise. An ally who had sworn fealty may suddenly make a decision that seems treacherous, but is actually a symptom of forgotten loyalties. Similarly, a leader might give orders that conflict with previously stated strategies, creating confusion on the battlefield or in council chambers. The rest of the coalition is forced to adapt constantly, revising their expectations and adjusting their strategies not to enemy action but to the unreliable memory of their own members. This creates a paradoxical environment where the stability of alliances is determined less by external threats than by internal cognitive fragility. The manipulation of memory, or the consequences of its loss, becomes a tool in itself. Those who remember clearly gain immense power, able to influence the course of events by exploiting gaps in the recollection of others. Secrets can be hidden not just in code or in silence, but in the very minds of those who forget. An ally who forgets a past betrayal may be tricked into forgiving or trusting again, while one who cannot remember a critical fact may inadvertently act against their own side. Memory loss creates a battlefield within the mind, one as significant as any physical confrontation. Strategies must now account not only for the actions of the enemy but for the fluctuating reliability of one's own forces. The concept of loyalty becomes slippery, shifting with the tides of remembrance and oblivion. Over time, the alliances themselves evolve, reshaped by necessity. Bonds that were once based on shared history must now be reinforced constantly, rituals repeated to remind all parties of their commitments. New alliances emerge not from trust but from pragmatism, as groups seek companions who are less prone to forgetting or who offer predictable patterns of behavior. In some cases, memory loss forces the creation of rigid hierarchies or strict protocols to maintain coherence. Scribes, reminders, and detailed logs become indispensable, transforming the nature of leadership and governance. The human element, the spontaneity, the intuition, the shared understanding that once characterized alliances, gives way to mechanical precision and redundancy. Alliances are no longer about belief in each other but about mitigating the risks of forgetfulness. This transformation impacts every aspect of interaction, negotiation, warfare, diplomacy, and daily cooperation. A single lapse in memory can cascade into a chain reaction of errors, misunderstandings, and unintended consequences. Yet, paradoxically, it also opens the door for new forms of loyalty and solidarity. Allies who compensate for memory loss, who act as anchors for the forgetful, develop bonds that are perhaps even stronger than those formed under normal circumstances. Empathy, patience, and constant vigilance become the new currencies of trust. Memory loss, while devastating, also forces a recalibration of values, emphasizing the importance of commitment and attention over mere recollection. In Violet's narrative, memory loss is not a background detail, it is a driving force that reshapes the political, emotional, and strategic landscape. The story demonstrates how fragile alliances truly are when the past cannot be reliably recalled, and how the very act of remembering, or forgetting, can shift the balance of power. Every choice, every conversation, every promise carries amplified significance, because the certainty that memory once provided has been stripped away. In this context, the struggle is not just against external enemies but against the erosion of collective knowledge and shared understanding. Alliances must be continuously tested, renewed, and reinforced, and even then, they remain vulnerable to the quiet but relentless force of forgetting. Xaden's transformation was unlike anything anyone had anticipated. It was not merely a change in strength or skill, but a fundamental shift in who he was and how he interacted with the world around him. Before the transformation, Xaden had been a formidable warrior, respected for his strategy and feared for his combat prowess, but ultimately limited by human constraints, emotions, morality, and the weaknesses of his own body. The change altered every facet of his existence. His physical abilities reached superhuman levels, his perception expanded, and his tactical mind began to process situations with a speed and precision that left allies and enemies alike struggling to keep up. Suddenly, the balance of the battlefield was no longer determined solely by numbers or conventional strategy but by the presence of a single individual whose very existence could dictate the flow of combat. The transformation reshaped alliances and rivalries alike. Former adversaries hesitated in the face of his new power, uncertain whether to confront him directly or avoid him altogether. Those who had once sought to manipulate Xaden found their schemes rendered obsolete, their plans unraveling in real time as he adapted faster than they could respond. His allies, who had previously relied on coordination and joint effort, now had to recalibrate their roles entirely. Xaden's presence became a force multiplier, capable of achieving in moments what had previously required coordinated squads or days of planning. But with this power came unpredictability. Even his friends were unsure of the limits of his transformation, and that uncertainty created tension. Every decision he made had outsized consequences, and the margin for error shrank dramatically. Emotionally and psychologically, Xaden's transformation had profound implications. The process altered not just his body, but his perception of morality, loyalty, and strategy. He began to see the world in terms of patterns and outcomes rather than personal relationships, and this shift affected how he interacted with both allies and enemies. While he remained committed to his cause, the methods he employed became more ruthless, more efficient, and at times, incomprehensible to those around him. Commanders who had relied on traditional chains of authority found themselves deferring to Xaden's instincts and judgments, recognizing that conventional tactics were no longer sufficient. The war itself began to evolve in response, shifting from battles of attrition and territory to confrontations dictated by the strategic genius and overwhelming capability of a single transformed individual. On a larger scale, Xaden's transformation forced every faction in the war to reconsider their approach. Armies had to rethink formations, strategies had to be rewritten, and diplomatic negotiations were colored by the presence of a force that could unilaterally change outcomes. The psychological impact was as significant as the physical. The mere knowledge that Xaden had changed created fear, hesitation, and recalculation among both enemies and allies. Propaganda and morale campaigns became essential tools, as those facing him needed to find strength in resilience rather than direct confrontation. In many ways, the transformation elevated Xaden from a soldier or leader to a symbol, a pivot point around which the entire conflict now revolved. The battlefield itself became a reflection of his new abilities. Zones that were once contested became dominated by his presence, and strategies that relied on stealth, speed, or deception were constantly thwarted. Opponents were forced into reactive positions, scrambling to respond to Xaden's every move rather than executing their own plans. This inversion of traditional power dynamics created an entirely new form of warfare, where adaptability, anticipation, and rapid decision-making were more critical than sheer numbers or brute force. Allies learned to trust Xaden implicitly, even as the very nature of his transformation made him a figure both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a living force capable of rewriting the rules of engagement.